Carol, what, 6 weeks ago?
Maybe, something like that, yeah.
And she's moved back to the valley from Boulder, Colorado. She has a long and very rewarding history as a videographer. And I think when she first came here and found us and toured the studio, it kind of blew her mind a little bit. I will always remember one thing she said was, "There's nothing like this in the entire state of Colorado."
Well,
So when we get a little reluctant to look around closely at what we have, I think about that, because we are very blessed. This is a pretty darn fine facility that's open to everybody, and that makes it great. Carol worked at, well, she's had a lot of jobs, but in Colorado, her main position was her own video production company, and she specialized, pardon me, she specialized at working with nonprofits to help them become more successful. We're kind of founded here at CMAC on the idea that everybody has a story to tell. And nonprofits especially have stories to tell. There are over 2,000 nonprofits right here in Fresno and Clovis. 2,000. How many can you name? 5, 10, maybe? Why? Because they've never had the opportunity to tell their story effectively. Production is an expensive process, staggeringly expensive, but not here. Here it's something that everybody can do, and that kind of lit a fire under Carol. She is with what used to be the Fresno Regional Foundation, and now is the Central Valley Community Foundation. One of these days I'm going to remember that name. I just know the other one so well. But she does development, and she does public relations and communications and all that good fun stuff. And I am really delighted to have her here, because she is a fount of knowledge that will help you become more successful in what you want to do, whether it's an individual project, or whether it's a communal project, or whether it's a nonprofit project. Carol is a real valuable resource, and she's made that resource available to us. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Please welcome Carol Christenson.
Thanks so much, Jerry. Really great to be here and to see everybody here. As Jerry mentioned, I've been in Fresno for about 3.5 months. I grew up in Lone Pine, which is on the other side of the Sierras. It's, as the crow flies, maybe only 60 or 70 miles in the Owens Valley. It's a very small town, only about 2,000 people, so that's the valley. When I say the valley, that's the one that I'm thinking of, but I'm happy to be in the Central Valley, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Central Valley Community Foundation. And as I said, I've been there about 3.5 months. So, and I think, is everybody familiar with the Fresno Regional Foundation? Or, I mean, it seems like people have heard of it. At least, it's been around actually for 50 years. This year is the 50th anniversary. And just let me tell you a little bit about what a community foundation is, just so that you can have an understanding of that. The unique thing about a community foundation is that the work that it does is rooted in the place where it is. So 50 years ago, what's now called the Central Valley Community Foundation was founded by some of the civic leaders here in Fresno, And it's a place where people can pool money or start a fund of their own, and the foundation helps direct the philanthropy to areas of need in the specific community where they're located. And the Central Valley Community Foundation covers 6 counties in what I guess we'd call the central part of the Central Valley. So that's Mariposa, Merced, Fresno, Tulare, Kings, and there's one other one that I'm forgetting. But maybe I'll remember it. And so that's what the Central Valley Community Foundation was set up to do, and that is what we do today. And so when I got there, I saw all the great work that was being done, and every year to give about $10 million in competitive grants to nonprofit organizations all around in the whole entire region. And I saw all this great work that was being done, and I thought, boy, there's so many stories that we could tell here. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. I actually started in video production at the community television station in Boulder back in the early 90s. It was the same idea, kind of the original incarnation of what this collective is, but it was actually Channel 54 community television station. And I became a member, and I learned how to use equipment, and at that time, that station was producing a show that focused on nonprofits in town. And I worked on that show, and we shot everything in VHS, and we edited everything in a linear system. But as time went on, that's where I got the basic skills. And then I saw all the great work that was going on in town, and I thought, I want to just be a part of telling these stories. So I worked as a freelance shooter and editor for different companies, and then in 2002, I decided to start my own company and just focus on working with foundations and nonprofits. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years or so, until I come here. And so when I got here, I thought, well, I want to see what are the resources in town that might be available to help me tell stories about the work of the foundation and the work of all the nonprofits in town that are doing all these wonderful things. And everyone said, oh, you got to go meet Jerry over at CMAC. So I said, okay, well, I'll go over. And Jerry's not kidding. When I walked in here, I was just like, whoa. Okay, this is an amazing facility. There is nothing like this in Denver. There's nothing like this anywhere in the Front Range of Colorado. I would hazard to say that there's really nothing that has the level and sophistication of equipment that exists in this building, probably maybe only in a city like Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York. I mean, this is a really, really impressive facility. And so I met Jerry and I met Brian, and I started talking to them about things that were going on in town. And I said, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could figure out a way to have your members and CMAC do kind of a collaborative project with the Central Valley Community Foundation, and I can help out, bringing knowledge on production and writing and how to create videos. And you guys have members, and you have all the equipment, and you have lots of know-how here too. And we can figure out how we can leverage all the resources that we have and help nonprofits in town tell their stories and raise awareness, which is always the first step. It's always so interesting, maybe not interesting, but it's just the way it is. People, even when they live in a place, and they've probably lived in a place their whole life, they sometimes don't realize the need that is out there. And so there's always a level of education and awareness raising that has to go on. And then in turn, that turns into fundraising. So I started talking with Jerry about it, and I started talking with Brian about it, and they got really excited about it. And the more we thought about all the different ways that we might be able to collaborate and bring people together, the more we thought it was a great idea and that we wanted to do that. And so that's basically the reason why I'm here talking to you now. And so one of the ideas that we have is that I can help. I have lots of stories that need telling and that are directly related to grantees at the foundation. In 50 years, there's been a lot of granting, and a lot of organizations have been helped. And so the collaborative effort is basically, you can, if anybody is interested in working on real projects that can make a difference in the community, and you have shooters and editors and producers and sound people and everybody else that could go along with it, then we can make that happen. And So that's what I'm here, to propose. And I'm happy to answer any questions or just kind of talk about how that might come to be. And I know there are also some people that are here from organizations who are interested in figuring out how they could maybe produce videos themselves. Maybe they're already doing it a little bit, or maybe they want to try to refine that a little bit. And that's certainly something else that I'm happy to help with. I mean, part of the Community Foundation in what we're calling now the next chapter is to still do what the foundation has done for the first 50 years of its life, but also now to work more about building community and bringing people together and helping to leverage the resources that are here and just expand what we're doing beyond what we've been doing and the foundation's been doing for the first 50 years. So this is part of that outreach effort. And that's why I'm here. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Please, go ahead.
Let's just dive right into it.
Sure.
Let's go with a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
Pick one of your favorite projects right now. I want to help you with it. Where do we start?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think first of all, I have a long list of people who are interested in doing this. I think that if you're interested in a certain area, some of the things that the foundation focuses on in just a general sense would be things that have to do with arts and culture, things that have to do with smart growth and environmental sustainability, things that have to do with youth. We have a big thing that we're launching now that we're part of called the Cradle to Career Partnership. So that's basically, there's programs that are really starting with children before they're born all the way to a career. So there's lots of things that go on with that. There's a lot of emphasis on teen pregnancy prevention and also teen success for young women if they do have children, how they can continue with their education and go to college and graduate from college. So there's a lot of social things that go along with that.
What I specifically meant was I'm very much interested in doing a documentary. It's a big project, and it's overwhelming. It's hard to know. How do we start out? How do we blueprint it? Where do we start? How do we map out the idea?
I think the first thing to think about is what area that you might be interested in. And if there is something specifically that really resonates with you, then, So there's some great projects that have to do with, like the Fresno Food Commons. Has everybody heard of the Fresno Food Commons? Or there's a couple of wonderful projects that are going on in the San Joaquin and Kings River restoration that are youth projects. So I think one way that we could get into this is to have people, after we finish, this talk, we can sign up with me and we can set up a time where we could sit down and talk about real specifics about how to get a project like this off the ground. I mean, what I typically do is identify the project. And then I think it's really, really important to have a close collaborative relationship with the organization because they really know what's important and what they're doing. So when I meet with somebody, one of the first things that I would talk to them about and one way I kind of frame it that seems to help people get thinking about it, I just say, what are maybe the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you want people to know about what you're doing after they watch this video? And that just gets people thinking, like, well, what do I want people to know? And then I just think of those as kind of the larger themes of the video. And the 3 or 4 or 5 is kind of important because, and I think somebody that I was talking to earlier alluded to this, time is a really interesting thing now in video production, right? When I first started, one of my first clients, maybe in 2002, was called Community Food Share, which is the local Feeding America food bank that served Boulder and Broomfield counties. And there is also a Feeding America food bank here in Fresno. So the first video I made for them was 14 minutes long. We showed it at a gala event, and everyone was like wrapped with attention because no one had ever seen what they had done before. This is when I started to realize that I was onto something because everybody knew it was a good thing, a good cause. But nobody actually realized all the ways that they actually got food and distributed food and all the ways that they were helping people. So for 14 minutes, people were just like, whoa, this is fantastic. The last video I made for them before I came here was about 5 minutes long, right? Because the attention spans, have changed. And so the way that I've had to learn over the years to approach that has changed. So nowadays, I try to say to people, look, depending on, how you want to deliver the video, and if it's going to be screened at an event, and then it's going online, that has a lot to do with how you're going to put it together. But these days, now we're talking about maybe 4 to 5 minutes. And I tell people, don't get hung up on that too much, because honestly, you can all agree with this. You can have a 2-minute video that's boring after 90 seconds, and it's really already lost you. So if something's good, people are going to watch it. And if it's engaging, people are going to watch it. They're going to give you, a little bit more time to tell your story. But by the same token, you need to dive right into that. It has to be good right away, because they'll give you maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe a minute. But you have to grab them right away. Otherwise, it's not going to matter either way. So to get back to the themes, you have to decide how much ground you're going to cover in the amount of time that you've started with. So sometimes just 3 things is actually a good amount to try to talk about. Maybe, because some agencies have a lot of programs. Some have less. So sometimes you have to decide, are you going to do one larger overview that you can sometimes cut into smaller pieces then to deliver on the web? That's one way to approach it that actually works very well. If you're having a gala or some kind of an event where it's going to be screened, maybe you'll have something that's 5 or 6 minutes long. That's more of an overview of several programs. But a lot of times then I would put something together, I would edit it in a way that then you could cut that into maybe 3 2-minute sections and deliver that on the web more as a series instead of all at once. But identifying the themes is a really important thing. And once somebody starts thinking about, sorry, I'm just going to get some water, what they really want people to know after they watch the video, then I say, let's start thinking about who's the best person or who are the best people then to tell that story. And the way I structured videos that I found to be the most successful is to use, you're doing your interview and you're doing your talking head because you're really trying to get the audio. So you're just building what a lot of people call the radio cut. You're not really going to show them all that much. Maybe they're going to be on screen for 8 or 10 seconds so that people can associate that voice with that person. But you're not going to have a person that's sitting there talking to people. What you're really going to have is a lot of B-roll. There's no such thing as too much B-roll. Okay, when you go on a shoot, honestly, you cannot get too much B-roll. It is an impossible thing to do. And the more you have, the better the end product is going to be. I'm sure lots of you have been hunting through your B-roll and slow-moing your B-roll and still framing your B-roll and doing everything else you can think of with your B-roll to try to make it last a little bit longer. So, if I was going to tell anybody anything, I say there's no such thing as too much B-roll. Just get as much B-roll as you can while you're there. But having somebody that is giving you that compelling audio narrative is really important. And it's maybe not always one person. Maybe it's a couple of people. But people that work in organizations are really great for this because they have so much passion. They wouldn't be doing it if they didn't care so much about what they were doing. So they're not professionals. But if you set up an interview and you start talking with them, I found that the best way to get that radio cut is you might only be going for a couple of minutes, but you have to let that camera roll for a while. It might take 15 or 20 minutes to actually get the pieces that you're trying to get. Because when people are not professionals, the camera has to go away somehow. So you have to get into a conversation with them so that they just start talking to you and they stop thinking oh, that camera, oh, God, I hope my makeup's okay, my hair probably look terrible. All those things that any of us would be thinking about when the camera turns on. Most of us, and me included, are hardly ever in front of the camera. But you need to have empathy for what that's like. But I found that as people start talking to you and you're listening, mostly you're listening, and you start having this conversation, then oftentimes in the last 5 minutes of an interview, you get all the best stuff that you're going to end up using when you put the cut together. But I've never had anybody that worked in a nonprofit or was involved in any kind of activism or doing anything that people do from their heart and with passion that was not great for a video. And I always try to not use a lot of voiceover, but just let the people tell the story. And then show with the B-roll what they're talking about. And you can actually cram a lot into a couple of minutes. I used to think 2 minutes, geez, that's hardly any time at all. But when you start thinking of it as like a well-crafted short story, you can actually, a person can actually, when you are editing an audio track and you're taking pieces and putting it together and creating that narrative, you can actually tell quite a bit in a couple of minutes. And the other thing that you can do is layer things in to your B-roll that then actually start conveying more and more information. So that's kind of a larger discussion, but I've always be thinking about what else can be layered in. Not so that it gets too busy and starts to be kind of a crazy thing, but there's ways to do this that really can make something much more compelling and much more interesting for people. And so it's not just, B-roll and audio. There's ways to layer in all kinds of things. Sure.
So without getting deep into that part, can you give us an example?
Sometimes it is a graphic overlay. Sometimes it's something with the audio itself. Sometimes it can be, an under music track that is doing something. Sometimes, a lot of times people don't use the ambient audio, I think, to the best advantage that it can be used. Now, a lot of times people will put a music bed underneath something that's kind of motivational or kind of pulls on the heartstrings and makes it very beautiful. But then, and they just totally pull down all the ambient audio that is in the piece. But then you're looking at something and it's just a weird thing because there's no connection there. Like, well, how come, that person's, talking is the worst. What everybody used to call lip flap. I don't know if everybody still calls it anymore, but lip flap was like the greatest enemy of broadcast television for a long time. But somebody talking or somebody singing or just, there's a lot of ways to work with audio that I think are completely, people don't pay attention to that. And how you can actually really make something evoke a lot more emotion just with very simple things like that. Did you have a question?
I got a question and comment because I do like industrial stuff at my work, industrial videos. And yeah, I found I got to shoot a lot of sound because anytime you show a machine, machines make noise.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that noise there, it doesn't really connect. There's something missing.
No, exactly.
So, and when you're shooting B-roll, the other thing is, shoot your audio B-roll of all the things that makes noises.
Yeah, and really think about your audio track and the timing of your audio track. So, in brief answer, that's something that I found to be really, really helpful. Sure.
This is a ways back, okay? So when I was going to school and stuff, we were doing a film documentary with mag stripe on the side of the film for the audio.
Sure.
And it was on a weird, difficult topic. And we scheduled, the producer scheduled this interview with this lady in her house. And I'm operating the camera. And she sits there like this, answering the interviewer's questions.
Yeah.
But we're recording all of this on film. And I've got my big spotlight thing up there. And at one point she says, would anyone like some coffee? And someone said yes. Now, I don't like coffee, but this is one of 2 times in my life I made sure I drank coffee. She went into her kitchen. Our light was off. She started making the coffee and she started talking about, the problem with this issue of de facto segregation because of areas of the community and how neighborhoods are, is this. And here's an example of this. Well, I flipped on the camera, turned it around to her kitchen, started recording. A little while later, I took the light and reflected it off the ceiling down at her and flipped it on, and it added a lot of light, but she was at ease because she was in her kitchen.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a great point.
And she just talked and talked and talked and gave us the most beautiful stuff that could be used.
Yeah.
But if we'd stayed in the interviewer guest
Sure.
format, even though it's on our own living room furniture, we would have gotten nothing.
No, I think that I totally could understand why that would be true, and it's great that that happened. I think that almost all the time in work that I did, I tried to go where the people are. You know, try to go to the organization or where they're doing the work, where the program is happening, and not set up a super formal, like, you know, you sit here, don't, you know, do anything weird, and, you know, don't go like this. And, you know, sometimes if people go like this too much, it can be, if they go out of frame, it can be kind of a problem. But, and some people, you know, if they're nervous, they do things that you don't expect. But yeah, to have people be comfortable, and a lot of this work I think needs to be done in the field. I very rarely would have someone come and do a studio shoot, even the interview. Because another thing that's really important about this work is to try to make it be as efficient as possible. And so if you can set up a shoot and you have the people that are going to be doing interviews and giving you your audio track, and you're at the same location where you're going to be able to get all your B-roll, then it makes a lot of sense, because you're not, you know, going back and forth and going back and forth and doing, you know, that kind of thing. So, but having people, I think having people in a place where they feel comfortable and talking to them long enough so that it just becomes a conversation and it's not really an interview. I think that makes a lot of difference. You know, when I first started out, I had this idea of what everything I wanted everybody to say. And I had my little list. I'm like, okay, I want them to say this, and I want them to say this. And nobody ever said any of that stuff. And I was having a fit because, you know, you're not saying what I want you to say. And I tried, you know, for a whole year I was really bogged down in how come they don't want to say what I want them to say. And then finally I realized that really wasn't going to work, and that I had to have a conversation and just talk to them and really actually spend a lot of time listening. I think a lot of people that are very successful in interviews are very good listeners. And because it often goes off on a tangent that you didn't really anticipate, but that tangent is actually where the beauty is. It's not really in that straight line narrative that you're kind of going. Oftentimes you learn something that you didn't know. You prepared yourself and you understand what they're doing, but people, just like, you know, she went into her kitchen and then suddenly she just just started talking about something that she had observed or cared about. That might not have been on your exact script, but it turned out to be like a really great thing. So there's a certain amount of flexibility and kind of just going into something with your themes in mind and this, you know, this outcome that you're trying to get to. But with nonprofit organizations and also, you know, foundations, people that are doing this kind of work, a really fluid mindset will go a long way to getting that really, really heartfelt thing. And just one other thing that I will mention that I think is important to think about in this subject is a lot of people focus on the what and the how. It's pretty easy, you know, to say what something is and then how they're doing it. But where people really get engaged and where they really become aware and where they really are connected in order to donate money is when you start talking about the why. It's why somebody should care, why somebody does what they do. The why is really what it's all about in marketing in general. I think if any of us thought about anything that we actually bought, we might have purchased something because of the what and the how a little bit, but it's more the why that makes us do anything. And this is absolutely a fundamental of successful short documentary filmmaking for nonprofit organizations. And that why is all over the place. But sometimes it just gets skipped over because people are really focusing and they just want to show what they're doing here and how they're doing it. But when you start asking people about why they do something and why this matters and why somebody else should care about it and donate it to it, it's a very, very powerful thing. Does anybody else have a question? Sure.
Do you expect a lot of the stories to look more promotional or more sort of issue-centered, objective documentaries? Or do you imagine the whole range of this will come out?
Yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of ways to tell a story. And I know that, over time when I was working with different organizations and I would try different things and I would say this is more successful with this organization or this might have been more successful with another organization. I don't think there's one way to do something. I think that when you collaborate with an organization and you meet with them and you talk to them about what I always thought to myself, what I'm really trying to do is make a useful tool for them so that they can go out into the community and they can share the story with whoever they want to share it with. And it's going to help them. A lot of times I would be working with people who are in the development department, right? The marketing and development department. It's going to help them do their job. It's going to help them tell their story, and it's going to help them be able to raise money. So that can look like a lot of different things, I think, depending on the organization and the group.
So that kind of dovetails right into all the social media stuff. What have you learned in recent times, aside from, I think your suggestion about chopping it up into pieces and putting it into parts is a really good idea. What else have you learned? I mean, I'm not a big Twitter user, but every once in a while I'll use it to promote a video or something that we've done.
Yeah. I don't think that foundations particularly use social media as much as they could.
Yes.
And I think nonprofits, some do a better job at it than others. I think just as a fundamental notion about social media, and I think this is one of the difficulties that nonprofit organizations have, and I'm sure anybody who's here that works at one can confirm this. Many people, nobody has just one job. Many people have at least 3 jobs, or 4, or however many. They're always, working on kind of with not as many people as they might like to have. So one of the things that might fall through the cracks is consistent social media posting. Now, I think to make social media work, whatever the platform, and I think nowadays you might choose, there's so many now, that I think it's possibly easier for people to choose maybe 3 that they just want to focus on and have that be what, and knowing where the people that they're trying to reach, what platforms they're using. I think that can be a demographic thing, and that can be a little bit challenging to figure that out. But to have consistent posting is number one. And then creating content that is going to be compelling in that forum. And I think that campaigns, the things that I've seen work the best are campaigns that are focused around a very specific thing. So you have a program and you have a grant and it's a matching grant. And so you have $25,000 and you need to raise $25,000. Social media and that kind of crowd sourcing can be really effective in that kind of context. I think it's more difficult to use it as in an overview kind of sense. I think it's a way to marshal the troops, so to speak, around something very specific. And I think any video can actually, especially when you are trying to do something short, you're doing it around one very specific thing, and at the end you have one very specific call to action.
Yeah, so on that note, I'm not really following what it is that you mean by consistency. Okay, so you're the producer of these documentaries, so you're attached to this project, and you want to help this organization. But you develop the project, you produce it, once it's done, you post it on everything, Google Plus and Facebook and Twitter and Yahoo, so what do you do from there? Isn't it they are responsible for maintaining it or continuing to bump it, if you will, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're going to do something like that, there should be some kind of a strategic plan in place about how you are going to use your social media to its biggest advantage. When I'm talking about consistent posting, I'm talking more about how you need to do it you can't like post and then a month later you post something else. You need to keep putting stuff up there so that people keep seeing you.
How do you do that without making it look like you're trying to do that, or just saying something just to keep it fresh?
I think you have to post things that you think will be interesting to your constituency. But people are interested to know what you have going on. Maybe not on an hourly or even a daily basis, but if you have
And you're
No,
referring to this as a producer, a documentary
Well,
producer? Or?
there's kind of a different, when I would do some kind of a video project for an organization, part of that project might also include what I would call a social media stack. So I would also produce for them, and a social media stack might be video, it would probably have photography, there would, the content would also, there would be writing involved, so that it's a stack ready for them to post. And it would be built around something that they were doing at that time. So that they, say they're starting a new program. And so you did a short video about the program. And then there's a stack that's built up for maybe a couple months or 3 months worth of content that they can keep rolling out that's connected to that program.
Piece at a time.
But sometimes you have to kind of keep going with the program as it's going so that you can get fresh content. And that is where it becomes even a little bit more challenging. But the best strategies are the ones that are thought out before you just think, oh, we got to post something this week. What should we post this week? Oh, does anybody have a picture, that we could post? And then, it just kind of falls through the cracks. But having somebody who's more dedicated in-house, somebody who's more dedicated to doing that, or having some kind of a team approach, but having a strategy. I think that there's a lot of ways that social media is really beneficial, but it's not new anymore, and people are flooded with social media,
Right.
depending on what your issue is.
And you mentioned that a lot of this is pretty new to the nonprofit organization promotion, so there's no real roadmap on how to do this right or wrong, right?
No, I'm not sure how much the organizations here are using social media as a real fundraising and marketing and awareness tool. I don't think there's a lot of video happening so far. Some, but not on a consistent basis, and not across the community in a large way.
I run into an issue concerning community cable access media, most specifically, but you also run into it with public radio and the like. And that is a restriction in there that, yes, you can put anything you want on there, but you cannot issue a call to action.
Right.
You can't be selling a product as such. That can't be the purpose of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you can't say, we really, for cable access, you really need to call right now, operators are standing by.
Yeah.
You can't do any of those, so.
Yeah, Jerry knows this better than I do, but the way that I understand it, anything that goes on the channel here,
Yes.
right? If it's,
That's
would
what I'm
have to
talking
not have, you can't have a actual call to action like call now or, do something immediately. But that's for
People to action.
for stuff that's going.
That's what Ed's doing with them all.
Not quite.
Well, she's talking about calling to action, and
That's
we can do that here.
Yeah, you could say if you're interested, here's the
Yeah.
number.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess there's ways you can interpret call to action.
You can.
We have a food shortage, come down and talk to us or call
Yes.
this number.
But you can't say, we're going to do a public protest at such and such a location. I
yeah.
want 500 of you to show up
Okay,
today.
that you can't do. Well, yeah, that's something that you could have to play with. Because I do think having some kind of what I will call a call to action at the end of a video is important, because you want people to be engaged with this and to understand more about what you're doing or what the organization is doing, and then you want them to do something with that. And right after they watch it is a good time for them to do.
So you can come close to that, very, very close to that.
Yeah.
And so my question is along this line. How do you balance it so you're not doing, so that on the cable access channels, you're not doing a Jerry Lewis telethon for one of your outfits,
yeah.
versus telling the story of the outfit and the wonderful things they do, and we'd love to have you involved. If you want more information, call such and such a number, which is not a call to action.
Yeah, I think that's what you would have to do. This isn't a hard sell, per se. I mean, this is really, a cell that's got to get people connected with the why and at the heart level. And then giving them a way to find out more about it is what you can do. I mean, if you have a specific program that you're doing and you can say, go here, you could volunteer. It's not just to get people to donate money. I think that's a misnomer too. Because people donate their time and their talent and their dollars. And often when people get engaged in an organization, they do all of those things. And sometimes you start as a volunteer and then you think, gee, I could do a little more. No, it's kind of a process depending on the people. Sure.
Nothing is the, I'm a professor, I teach students how to do this, so we do a lot of these kind of videos. And what I've seen over and over, there's 3 things that you can communicate. They need money, they need volunteers, and whatever the service is that they offer, they have people they can serve with their service. And you tell the story of a volunteer, you tell a story of someone who's getting the service, and that you don't even have to be exclusive. You just tell their story, and people get inspired by that, and then here's how to get a hold of us, and that's how they'll come and volunteer.
Exactly.
Or they'll donate, or they need the service.
Yeah.
So you don't have to hard sell. The call to action is, this is these people's stories.
Exactly.
For more information, here's where we are.
Yeah, exactly. I think that oftentimes when people see themselves, they see a person who's volunteering who's very much like themselves, and they're like, well, I can do that. Yes.
As a storyteller, do you have a distinct voice? And if so, how did you find that voice, and how do you have kind of a consistent voice that you use in your productions? If we were to look at 10 of your things,
sure,
would it be really consistent?
I've had people tell me that.
And how did you develop that, or do you think that's...
I have had people tell me that they could always tell it was something that I made. I'm not exactly, I didn't investigate it further to say, well, why did you think that? But I do think everybody has their voice. Everybody has their way that they tell a story. Mine was a lot like what you were just talking about. Let the people in the organization tell the story. Let people talk about their own lives and how they were helped by this. So, let people who are who run the programs talk about why they do it, what they're doing and why they do it. And try to bring that full circle. I think one of the things that I think sometimes gets missed, and this is particularly true in the community foundation sense, and maybe in other organizations that are part of the donating money part, is to, that money came from, in the community foundation, a lot of times from a family or from an individual that started that fund. And then the grant was made to a program, and then it helped maybe a scholarship. And then you can bring that also back to that person, so that you can make a circle and tell a story that way. But I think everyone has their own voice and way of doing it. I really like to focus on the why. I really like to talk to people, spend time with people, and have them really talk about what's important to them and why this matters. It's a little bit softer. No, it's not hard sell. It's really about, a lot of the times I think of the audience for the video is just somebody like me, someone who lives in town, who cares about the place where they live, and who didn't know about this at all. I've learned so many things over the years living in a town, where you live in the same town for years and you had no idea. And then I learned this, and I think, geez, there's got to be a lot of other people that would like to know this too. And this is, my voice in telling it. But I encourage everybody to find their voice in the way they want to do things, because there's many, many ways. Even using a certain strategy or formula to tell the story, that you can do that. Anybody else?
Just kind of got into what you're trying to help us learn how to do indirectly. My son and I have been producing a show called Valley Veterans Forum through CMAC for some time.
Nice.
But recently, I had to go back to New York on a family matter. And while I was back there, I volunteered my video skills to help raise funds for a memorial wall that's being built for Vietnam-era veterans from the high school I attended.
Wow.
It just so happens that it's been an ongoing process already. They started working on this in 2007, and when I came along, they were about halfway through the fundraising process, but kind of stalled. So I came back and did I'm going to leave you a copy of this so you can critique it, because I would really appreciate
Sure.
your critique, because it's right up the alley of what you're saying. I tried to tell the story. Well, first of all, I voiced it in my own voice because it was part of the script that I wrote was in the first person.
Yeah,
But I tried to tell the story of why they were doing this, because it's a memorial not only to people that served in Vietnam, but during the Vietnam era. And growing up during that time was very tumultuous. Anybody who studied history knows. At any rate, I quite enjoyed it. It was quite an emotional experience for me personally to do this thing. It wound up being about 9 minutes, which seemed to get the message across pretty well. And the people I sent it to were quite pleased with it.
good,
And it's been posted on YouTube, and it's been posted on my Vimeo channel.
nice.
And it will be hooked up to the news. They have something called the Hicks News, which they publish. And that's how they've been carrying the story about this memorial. Okay, so I figured I could just tag this into it. That's what's going to be done. It's going to be linked to the
Yeah,
thing. But a couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, I want to tell you I went to school in Boulder, Colorado. So
Oh, you did?
when I saw
University of
that you were
Colorado?
gonna come to speak here, I immediately said I have this meeting.
it's a wonderful
Okay.
school.
But the other comment that you made about this place being a real jewel, I found it the same way a few years ago when I came and talked to Jerry before I joined. I couldn't believe it. And I've lived in Fresno for 40 years. And I couldn't believe that something like this could. So it's an incredible opportunity for anybody to take whatever skills they feel they have. I've always been a frustrated writer, so I back into the video by using my writing skills.
Yeah.
But it's been truly a fulfilling experience for me, and the more I learn about the process, the
Yeah,
more excited I get about it.
for you. I'd be happy to look at anything that you've
Yeah.
done.
Critique too,
Sure, okay.
for sure.
Can you kind of talk about, the process? You kind of, let's say it's an organization you've never heard of, or it's a brand new organization that's come to you and be like, you want to make a video. What's kind of your process about learning more information about, what kind of research do you do?
I learned mostly, and it's kind of going back to what I said before, I learned by talking to the people. I mean, I think you can always, you can look at their website and you can see what any kind of published materials they have. But I think to really get to the heart of something, I really like to talk about the people who founded the organization, started the organization, work in the organization, are helped by the organization, to really get a sense of what is
Do
happening.
you start filming right then and there, or do you
No,
learn first?
I would always have at least one meeting where I would say, if it's a small organization, maybe everybody's coming. If it's a larger organization, who's going to be the team, that's going to work on this? And some people think, well, I'm not a writer, I don't know how to write a script. But the thing that I was explaining earlier about just talking to people and saying, what do you want people to know after they watch this? What are our themes? Then it's more of an outline. It's not like you have to sit down and write something that might be intimidating and you might think, I don't know what I'm doing. It's more like creating an outline and then finding the people to talk about those things and creating a list of questions. I mean, when I would sit and meet with people and try to learn about the organization, I would basically, you could call it a list of interview questions, but really I would have it with me just as something that I can refer to so that I'm be sure during the time that I'm talking to somebody that we are covering all the themes that they wanted to talk about. And a lot of times those would be in the form of a question, but as a starting place. But I think really to be successful in this type of work, you need to develop a very collaborative relationship with the organization that you're working with. Really get to know them and why they're doing what they're doing, and how you can create a tool for them that will be useful.
One of the difficulties I have is that these people, these alum that are working on this fundraiser are from different classes, and they're about my age, late 60s, 70s. They're spread out all over the country now. They've retired, moved to Florida, etc. So there's only one guy that was there on Long Island that I was able to meet with, who's kind of the treasurer, and he has to coordinate with people
all
in
over.
Florida, and so did I,
So it's a little more challenging.
that's one of the difficulties I had to overcome. Okay, I didn't want to just throw something out there and say, I hope you like it. I wanted to definitely get as much feedback as I could before I started on this thing.
Yeah.
And I did, but even then I found after the fact that I didn't completely meet every expectation.
Yeah.
Because some people on the committee, quote unquote, wanted more and other people were,
Well, it's another important aspect of this work, because I think a lot of times you're working on a limited budget, probably, unless you're working with a pretty large organization. But everyone wants to have efficiencies. So I would really try to make, and I think this is true with any creative endeavor, but it's especially true with video production, you really want to try to understand and do as much legwork as you can in the beginning, so that you're not doing a lot of revision and a lot of recutting and a lot of, I really try to meet with people and develop that collaborative relationship so that when you make your first cut, it is actually very, very close, and they're thrilled, and it's very close to what you're going to end up with. Maybe you're going to make a few minor adjustments, but it's not going to be something that you just completely miss the mark and you're, kind of like hunting through your footage and not sure what you're going to do. A lot of that has to do with just really good groundwork up front. Really talk about what those themes are, really talk about who is best to do that. And it's not as difficult as maybe I'm making it sound.
Were you a one-person operation? Did you take a crew out?
Yeah, depending on the project.
Single camera, usually a single camera, and the big one is how did you handle audio and lighting?
Yeah, depending on the project. If I was doing something that was either a relatively low budget and kind of a smaller project, I did everything myself. So I did almost everything in the field. So sometimes I would do a 2-camera shoot by myself. I don't really recommend this. It's kind of, a little crazy. But I had, but a lot of times I would just have one camera. I would use a wireless lavalier. And I would, and it's difficult because I would say to people, say I'm sitting here, my camera's here, the person's across from me. I would say to them, look, I am doing my own audio and my own video right now, so I am going to look over, at the camera and periodically and might do things. Just pretend like I'm still right here, okay? I would say that to them. I said, don't follow me, because I noticed when I would do it, and then people would be like, look over here, and it becomes slightly problematic if the camera's on the side. If the camera's on the side where you have your viewfinder, it's a lot easier. But then you have everybody from the same side, right? So sometimes I just, to mix it up for editing interest, I put it on the other side, and then it becomes a little bit more difficult. And then I just had a basic low light kit where I would do maybe 3-point or maybe one spot with fill, just to have good. I would just oftentimes, and it can be challenging because if you're going to somebody's office, sometimes it's super small, super dark, super backlit, super anything you can think of, you'll have going on there. You just have to try to figure out where you can be. The ugliest boardroom or conference room you've ever seen in your life is what you got. So I would just try to make it informal, but I basically had everything I could roll in like 2 bags, and
You said a lavalier.
A wireless lavalier.
Did you use 2 of them, one for you and one for them?
No, because I never have my voice on the finished piece.
So what did you mean by, I'm going to do this?
Well, if I was doing the camera, so if I would have the camera here and I wanted to look over at the viewfinder to see how they look in the frame, then I would tilt over and they would follow me with their eyes. They would tilt over too. And I'd be like, no, over here, okay? Just stay there. Or if I'm doing, 2 cameras, I would say, just look right here where I was. I'm over here now. But if a project was bigger, then I would have a second camera, or I might have somebody doing audio. And I just had other independent contractors, essentially, that I would call up and say, hey, I have a bigger project. If I needed somebody to do motion graphics, I almost always did all my editing, the straight editing by myself, because I really enjoyed that part.
Did you shoot in 720 and then not deal with was all your content made just to go on TV, or what was your...
Well, I shot in 1080.
1080.
And just managed those file sizes. And a lot of the stuff nowadays, that would be fine to go on the public access channel, and then also for the web. And I never made high def DVDs. But some people, I would just make standard def DVD. Some people still, want something on DVD, hardly ever anymore, but it does occur. So I would just do the project based on the budget and the complications of it, but I just drug all that stuff through airports and.
So I know it's been a while, what camera were you shooting?
I always use Sony cameras, and mostly on a Sony NX. So, and when I still sat on tape, I had a Z1U. I drug that thing all over the place. I probably did, 80% of the work in my career on tape, and in, just dragging it all over.
There are a lot of people in the room that would know this technique. There are some people in the room that wouldn't know, but how you do a 2-camera shot of an interview with only one camera, which if you know this, then you'll be able to spot it on TV. The news guy goes through and does the interview.
Right.
With the camera pretty much all the time on the interviewee. Then afterwards, and it used to be with a handheld mic, they'd go, okay. Afterward, the camera is turned around and faces the reporter, and the reporter says, well, tell me, Mr. Smith, what did you see as the car was speeding toward the intersection? And moves the mic this way, you then cut in the answer, and you alternate back and forth that way. So you actually do 2 sets. You do your close-up of the interviewers last, because you now know what the answers are and you know how to match it together.
I suppose, yeah. I found, I never did anything like that. And I found too, I just preferred lavaliers, and just wireless lavs just seem to be easier in general, though sometimes those can be problematic. I would go on to the University of Colorado, and there's so much whatever in the air, that I would have to use a wireless. But just to get, I think people, and probably everybody here knows it, but most people don't realize how important the quality of the audio. It's far more important than the quality of the video. And, that's one of the big, I try to help people, crowdfunding really got going a couple of years ago, and people doing Kickstarter campaigns and all that kind of thing, and people would say, well, what can I do, how can I do? And I'd say, you have to figure out a way to get good audio, and you have to get a tripod, okay? You just can't stand there with your phone going like that, okay? But I just found that lavaliers, and then if I had a bigger crew, I would use something on a boom. But, you pin a lavalier on somebody, and everybody's kind of used to seeing those, and you get good audio. And I would encourage people, a lot of people want to do things outside. I love outside. Outside is great, except when you're trying to get good audio. And then outside is terrible, because people don't realize how much noise there is outside. They think, oh, my little patio is so quiet. I'm like, no, actually, probably not. So that's something to always keep in mind when it comes to audio. I've probably gone, I don't know how long you guys normally go in these. I'm happy to keep talking to you, but I don't want to.
There's lots of crew talent available, lots of production talent also. Are you hoping to find someone to take on a project?
Yeah, I am really.
Shepherd through and deliver a product?
Yeah, what I'm hoping to do is create a collaborative project, many of them, with members at CMAC, and help in any way that I can to help those happen. I certainly have stories. You were just reminding me about veterans. Veterans is an issue that is really important at the foundation right now, and the board has just launched they put in $25,000, and it's a matching grant, so we're going to raise $25,000 to have a $50,000 fund and we started a whole thing about welcoming veterans home and finding ways to reintegrate veterans into the community. There's lots of difficulties, and then people coming back with lots of talent that nobody knows about. And so, but one of the grantees that I just did a print annual report, got it printed last month. And one of the programs that I'm sure probably a lot of you have heard of is called Break the Barriers. And they have a ballroom dancing class for veterans. And I thought, well, what a great little video that could be. What a great story. So there's lots of things like that. And they also have other programs that break the barriers for veterans, but I just, in the annual report, featured that one piece of it. But there's lots of stories. I have great projects that are going on in the San Joaquin River with kids that are getting maybe the first job they've ever had doing river restoration. And you could get in that kayak and bring your camera, don't drop it in the water,
Do you have any clues or tips on how you deal with the expectations of people that you're working with that are in the volunteer organization you're going to do a product for? But have what we all wish our product looked like, that it was just an effortless, magical thing that happened. So you go and work with them, and then they discover that there is this feedback process, this interactive process, and they're more involved than they thought they would be in you're pulling the idea out of them and getting it into the final video product.
I just think like I said before, I think you have to take time up front to try to lay the groundwork as best you can. You're not going to be able to figure it all out perfectly. But I think that people oftentimes have an idea about how they want to tell their story, or they know they have a great story, but it's really hard for them to figure out how they might do that. And you're there to really help them with that. Say, here's how we might do it, and what do you think? But really have the project well laid out before you start. I think that's the best thing you can do. There's difficult people that sometimes, might be hard to get exactly what they're looking for, but I think if you get as close as you can on the same page in the beginning, that's the best thing that you can do.
And then interact and talk.
Yeah, no, exactly. Be sure they understand what your vision is and how you want to tell the story. And a lot of times, the people that are, from the organization that want to make the video are also in the video. So they kind of get a sense of what is happening and, how you might put that together. And, I think if you write your outline and you identify the themes that you're after, that it's not going to be a, contentious or difficult thing, really. People are very happy to see their story out there and to have this thing that they can use. Yeah.
I think we have here people who are making videos already.
Mm-hmm.
And then we probably have people like me who have a project that needs a video.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we would just have to muddle through and make it. But I'm hearing that there's possibly help.
It's a collaborative.
So I need to know how to hook into that help.
I think that certainly I'll give you my contact information, but I think that too, being a member here gives you an opportunity.
So how do you become a member here?
You just sign up. You can talk to Jerry, the guy who introduced me. He's the manager here, and Kyle is right in the back there with the camera. He can help you. But it's a pretty easy process to become a member, and then you can sign, if you want to try to do some things yourself, you sign up for classes. They have lots of great instruction here about how to use cameras, how to do video, how to do audio, how to do everything. And there are a lot of people here that I'm sure that are members that you can collaborate with to bring your project to fruition.
And may I add,
Sure.
It's very easy to do it, and it's the best investment you'll make in yourself. Do it.
Except for editing.
Sounds good.
It's a lot of fun. I think that just making videos is a lot of fun, and helping organizations that need their stories told is just a tremendously rewarding thing to do. It just is. And so if anybody is interested in kind of taking the next step in this, I would love to talk to you more. And I'm really excited that this facility is here and that there's lots of members that might be interested in telling stories. I'll just leave you with one observation that I've made since I've been here that I think is really unique and interesting, and why I think this kind of collaboration in kind of a from the 30,000 foot view could really have a lot of power. I have never lived in a place with so many people that are from here. Now, I lived in Colorado and New Mexico for the last 20 years. And there's lots of people that come to Boulder from New York and Chicago and San Francisco and LA, and all the time, in 20 years that I lived there, I don't think I met 10 people that actually grew up in Boulder. and hardly that many people that even were from Colorado. But in Fresno, people are from here. They care about this place, and they want to make a difference here. I mean, I really get the sense that people know that there is poverty. They know that there are issues. They know that things, people need help. But I feel like it's in a place where that's the starting place. Okay, we know that, but we can start doing, a lot of work has already been done. And now even more work can be done to tell the stories, to raise awareness, to get people on board, and to start really making even more of a difference than's already been made. And I think that because people are from here, there's lots of people in Boulder who are very philanthropic and want to help everybody. But here, you can tap into something that's very unique and very powerful, because there's a connection here that doesn't exist, I don't think, in any places that I have lived. And I think it's really a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed it.